When I was 18 years old, I traveled on 73 flights to 46 countries. And in this year, I saw the sun rise over Mount Kilimanjaro, nearly had my arm bitten off while shark diving in Cape Town, and fed bananas to wild monkeys as they bolted through the Panama Canal. So I know what you might be thinking. This is the story of some reckless teenager who runs away from home in search of woman in parties. And admittedly, there might be some truth to that. But I assure you, it's a much more meaningful story. So what philosophical lessons did I learn in my teenage globetrotting year? Well, let me tell you. Here are the 3 themes to my year around the world. Theme 1. You're one yes away. Now, this isn't an admission into a prestigious university. It's not an acceptance into a top law firm, or a yes that anyone else gives you for that matter. It's an empowering yes. It's a yes that only you can give yourself when your back is against the wall, you're staring in the face of adversity, and no one is going to give in to that decision but you. So I look back at the decisions that changed the trajectory of my life, and they all have to do with me saying yes in a moment where a no would have been much easier. And that first yes came when I was just 17 years old and living in sunny San Diego, California. I came from a beautiful neighborhood, comfortable background, great tennis training. So yeah, on the surface, everything seemed great. But underneath that superficial layer, I struggled with anxiety and depression. I felt trapped and alone. And there were countless times that I would wake up and I would wish that my day was over from the second it began. And so I knew that I needed a change of environment to change my state of mind. And for that reason, I made the decision to leave home before my senior year of high school from San Diego to Naples, Florida, where I trained for tennis at the Academia Sanchez Casal. And that was a yes. And because of that one yes, my mental health improved, I achieved a junior world ranking, and I was on track to play college tennis. Now, instead of going down that path, I wound up pursuing other opportunities that the Academy opened for me. I became a contributing writer for Florida Tennis Magazine on my experiences traveling the world for the sport that I love. I also founded Legends United, a charitable platform for professional tennis players to donate their signed equipment. And those opportunities eventually led me to travel alongside the professional tours where I met so many of my childhood idols, which ultimately led to my gap year traveling the world before starting at the University of Miami. And so had I not given myself that first yes and left home from San Diego to Naples, I might not have had the courage to make that second yes and that third yes and all of those yeses that followed. And so this initial idea of me escaping my reality turned into me embracing myself. I was finally saying yes to myself. And so, in my trademark flip-flops, with my passport in hand, and a bag filled with Nike tees and shorts, I embarked on the adventure of a lifetime, the one I knew that I was deserving of living. Theme 2, make yourself uncomfortable. So it's one thing to give yourself this yes, and it's another thing to make the most out of this yes. So I'll go back to May of 2019, where I was in the middle of my year around the world. I had just done 3 weeks of chasing lemurs around Madagascar and sailing around the Musandam Peninsula of Oman. And I had just 26 hours left before this segment of the trip was over. I was in Tel Aviv. Now, instead of spending those 26 hours sauntering Tel Aviv's palm-lined boardwalk or getting a good night's sleep, and even though I knew it was a logistical nightmare, I decided on a day trip to one of the world's 7 wonders, Petra in Jordan. Now, the bus departed at an early 3 a.m., and when I arrived midday, I wound up hanging out with a young Australian guy, Alex. Now, Alex, being the charismatic guy that he is, convinced me to climb the sandstone cliffs of Petra in not hiking boots, but in my flip-flops. And despite nearly falling off the ledge to my death that day, Alex and I made beautiful memories underneath the Jordanian sun atop the cliffs of an ancient city. Unfortunately, I only spent a few hours in Petra before making the long 7-hour bus ride back to Tel Aviv and barely catching that 5 a.m. flight to Miami. But the point of this story is not my time in Petra per se, but rather the start of my friendship with Alex. because just a couple weeks later, I flew from Guatemala City, Alex flew from Prague, and we met in Buenos Aires, where we started a 3-week expedition around South America together. And in those 3 weeks, we impersonated journalists to sneak into South America's most revered tennis stadium. And we indulged ourselves in 2 more of the world's 7 wonders, Christ the Redeemer in Brazil and Machu Picchu in Peru. And those are some of my most cherished memories. And then just 6 months later, Alex and I flew to Australia, where I stayed in his home and met and bonded with his friends. Friends of friends. So again, it would have been easy for me to have gotten a good night's sleep in Tel Aviv that day before making that 5 a.m. flight back to the States. But sometimes it's not the most logical decisions that get you the most out of your yes. It's about making yourself uncomfortable and committing and embracing to all of those feelings that gives you. And so, theme 3. Memories don't belong to a moment, they belong to you. So once you make your most special memories, you owe it to yourself to keep them. And so for the last anecdote I'll share, I'll go back to the end of 2019, where just hours before New Year's, I was sitting at the dinner table with Seb and his family, whom I had met spontaneously during that winter break trip in Melbourne, Australia. Now, just before we started eating dinner, Seb's father looked at me in the eyes and raised his glass, offering a toast to new friendships. But the thing is, that toast wasn't just for Seb's family and myself. It was for everyone who had welcomed me into their lives with open arms that year. And it's difficult to articulate, but when tapping glasses, memories flooded back to me. Those that I wanted to hold on to dearly. Those that had made me laugh, that had made me cry, and that had made me love. And had I not held on to those memories, kept in touch with all of those amazing people, they wouldn't have meant much at all, because they would have been lost, stolen from me by a moment. But by holding on tightly, I held on to my time with Kuhan in Spain, when we snuck out of his tennis academy and he crutched through the rustic streets of Palma de Mallorca with a sprained ankle. Or with Bongani and Lesotho, when we drove through the guts of South Africa and ventured into one of the world's most remote countries. With Kofi and Manuel in Mozambique, who were hitchhiking through the Swaziland desert when I found them and we drove to their home city of Maputo. With Emma, Kenny, and Sam in the Cayman Islands, who, despite only knowing me for a couple of weeks, invited me to swim alongside them in stingrays in the Caribbean. With Joaquin in Guatemala, when we raced ATVs up the mountains and through the greenery of the old and beautiful city. With Lax in Cambodia, when we took tuk-tuks through the capital of Phnom Penh and then found Zen in the royal palace. Or with Manu and his beautiful family in the Philippines, when we drove up the windy roads of Palawan to El Nido, where we were surrounded by colossal limestone cliffs and crystal clear waters. Now, these are just a few of my most cherished memories. But the truth is that I made hundreds, and I am a collection of those memories. You own your memories. You assign your memories value. You are a collection of your memories. And so I know that not everyone will be able to take a year off, or might even want to travel, for that matter. But what I do know is that everyone will have the opportunity to take a leap of faith at some point. And that leap of faith will be different to everyone. It will be unique to you. And that's beautiful in itself. So just know that you're one yes away from changing the course of your life. You're one uncomfortable moment away from meeting a best friend. And you're one toast away from reliving your most cherished memories. Thank you.